All we've got to do now is to start pumping.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to another exciting episode of the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. Exciting because the NFL gave us another exciting weekend of games. So we're going to be recapping every single game from NFL Week 5, then getting into the Patreon mailbag, which, speaking of which, before we hop in, I want to remind you that this show is brought to you by my amazing Patreon supporters on patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy, where you can support this show. You'll also get exclusive content. I just put up my first film breakdown of the season. Been busy, haven't had a lot of time to get those done, but finally got one up. It's of Trey Lance's rookie debut against the Arizona Cardinals. Also going to be putting up the exclusive picks here tomorrow. So exclusive content there on Patreon, and you can gain access to the mailbag for this show that we're going to get into at the end of the podcast. So that's patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. If you want to support this channel, if you enjoy all the content, that is how you can really maximize your support of this channel and everything that I do. And thank you to everybody who has signed up to this point and who is considering checking it out. Okay, let's talk about some football. And I kind of ordered the games this week as in order of like what struck me the most, whether it was, games that changed my opinions more or my perspective on these teams, or just the more exciting games in general. And then towards the back end, it's more games that either went according to plan or just didn't really catch my eye. So we're going to spend a little bit more time on the early slate as far as my ordering here, not necessarily early slate like noon games or whatever. But yeah, you get the point. Let's go ahead and get started. San Francisco at Arizona really caught my attention this week for a variety of reasons. Number one was this was just more Kyler Murray doing unbelievable things. And this wasn't like his best game. It wasn't his biggest game. But he played really freaking well in this game, despite only scoring 17 points. This was another example of how much he's bringing to the table for the Cardinals, because the pass rush was getting in. And San Francisco's coverage, believe it or not, was actually really tight for the majority of this game. But Kyler Murray made, 3 or 4 throws in this game that just changed the landscape of the entire game. He had the throw that I tweeted, and it has been going around on Twitter, to Rondale Moore down the sideline in the middle of this game on a touchdown drive where there was pressure. He saw single high coverage. He knew he had a chance to hit the back shoulder to Rondale Moore, but he needed to buy some time. So he just backs up and then off his back foot throws about a 40-yard dime right on the sideline where only Rondale Moore would have a chance of catching the thing. And then you also have to credit Rondale Moore, who was spectacular in this game on a variety of different plays. None more than this one, however, where he extends his arms, just subtly drags his feet. It was an unbelievable throw. It defied physics. There's a couple other plays in this game. He was booting out to the left, avoiding pressure, which again, he was under pressure all game. He throws across the field. He has DeAndre Hopkins, yes, but he has a chemistry with him that Kyler deserves credit for as well. He had like a cross field from 30 yards away communication with DeAndre Hopkins where he tells him, I'm going to throw this one up. And he does. He layers it right between the top of the secondary and the underneath coverage. He did have a man on him, but if he doesn't put that right where it was, there's a chance that those defenders can converge on that play. So he gets a beautiful one-on-one jump ball situation with DeAndre Hopkins, which, yes, you will take every day of the week with DeAndre Hopkins, but still a cross field, just amazing throw. He had a couple other really nice plays in this game. There's no chance in hell that the Cardinals win this game with average quarterback play, because the Niners actually put together a pretty good game plan. They were moving the ball offensively, and I'm going to talk about Trey Lance and some of the takeaways I had from that Patreon film room that I recorded last night. But the Niners played good defense. They were getting after Kyler Murray. The coverage was pretty good relative to how bad that secondary is supposed to be and how good the Cardinals receivers are. And Kyler just, he made enough plays to win this game. So despite only putting up 17 points and from an outside, like if you didn't watch this game, you might not look at this and say, oh, that was an MVP game from Kyler Murray. It absolutely was. He was spectacular in this game. And then let's talk a little bit about Trey Lance, who also kind of a similar situation where, you know, I didn't catch this game on Sunday. I was at the Bengals game while this game was going on, and I ended up rewatching it yesterday, and I expected Trey Lance to look kind of ugly in this game. You know, 10 points, they lose. I thought they had a chance at winning this game, and they very much did, by the way. And he was really impressive for a rookie debut, especially with everything I've said about Trey Lance being this, you know, D1 AA prospect coming out of his freshman season, hadn't played in 2 years. Now, when they drafted him, I said A-plus pick. He has a best chance to be a Hall of Fame quarterback out of anyone in this class because he's ending up with Kyle Shanahan. But I also said he is the worst quarterback right now. And I don't know if that's true or not, but the reality is he was really good in this game and made some really impressive plays. Now, there was also a lot of what I just described. Young quarterback, gonna need some time. So let's get the bad stuff out of the way, and then we can talk about what he did well, I suppose. He did throw an interception very early in this game. He saw a route developing late. His eyes went to the wrong place, but he wasn't decisive enough. And honestly, most veteran quarterbacks would just step up in the pocket, throw off of a good foundation, and hit it was a deep crosser, hit it with the correct timing and accuracy and mechanics. And that's not what happened. He kind of decided to throw it a little late, felt the pressure, started to scramble, and then just before he reached the line of scrimmage, he kind of lets it go, and it not only was it too late, but it sailed over the receiver's head. So it was kind of a slow decision to be made, even though it was like the right read, sort of, and the accuracy was off. So that was obviously a really bad play. But once you take that out of it, it was a pretty good game. There was a couple plays in there, actually two that come to my mind that turned into completions. I want to say one was to Debo, and one was to Brandon Ayuk. But similar deal where like his eyes went to the right place, but the timing was off, and he kind of made it a little bit harder than he should have. And fortunately for him, Debo and Ayuk made those catches, but they were dangerous passes that could have gone either way, really. So there were some moments in there where he was just a little bit slow, and other than that one throw, I thought his accuracy was pretty good, but that one wild missed throw did lead to a pick. So I'm not trying to act like it was perfect, but for the most part, I was actually really impressed. He was going through his progressions. He was accurate for most of the game. He had a beautiful back shoulder where he recognized single coverage on the left side, hit Brandon Ayuk, nice catch. But those are kind of the tough third down moments that you want to see from a quarterback, pushing the ball into the right spots to move the sticks. He was also really good as a scrambler in this game. That's not a big surprise, but when we watched Trey Lance in the preseason, his pocket presence was really crappy. Like he just looked like a freshman coming out of D1 AA getting plugged into an NFL situation. And that wasn't the deal here. He looked much more comfortable inside the pocket, sensing pressure. There was some spots that you could nitpick and say, you know, he should do this differently based on that feel. There was a play, I think he took a sack on it. I can't remember if he took a sack or ended up getting rid of it or what happened, but basically he tried to step through when Zach Allen had already cleared the inside, whereas you'll see a lot of these elite quarterbacks kind of do that spin move to kind of clear out. Again, I talked about this in the film room, very nitpicky stuff. I think that's all stuff that he can grow in time. This is his rookie debut as a full starter. So overall, I was really impressed by Trey Lance, and I think you keep him in at this point because the Niners are, what are they, 2-3, right? Or 3-2? Oh boy. I think either way, they're in a terribly difficult division. They don't look like Super Bowl contenders, and I don't think Trey Lance is gonna like destroy himself playing behind this situation. I don't think this is like what Justin Fields is working with in Chicago, where the play calling, the offensive line, it's kind of a mess, making things really hard on Trey Lance or on Justin Fields. I think in Trey Lance's case, he's getting enough support here, and this was without George Kittle, by the way, which will make a huge difference if and when he comes back. But the scenario is good enough for Trey Lance that you're not ruining him. You're putting him in a spot where he can have some explosive plays, develop that confidence, but not ask too much of him either, if that makes sense. So I think you probably just stay with Trey Lance at this point. We'll see. And that could make things interesting as far as a Jimmy Garoppolo trade market opportunity. Does a team maybe want to go and get Jimmy for a playoff run? It could be fascinating. And we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, that game really stood out to me. And I walked away feeling better about San Francisco than I did coming in. And I don't think their season's done. I don't think they're going to win a Super Bowl. But if you go through this year and you kind of have that, I guess, I don't want to compare anyone to Justin Herbert because his rookie year was incredible. But if you're kind of like the Chargers last year where you win 7 games, but your quarterback looks phenomenal, then you have the 2021 Chargers. So, I don't know. I feel a lot better about the Niners after watching the game, even though it was only 10 points, right? But they also got stuffed like at the inch-yard line. That was a total game-changing play. Trey Lance on 4th down got stuffed, and it was just a great play by Vallejo. The linebacker from the Cardinals came from the other side to help Isaiah Simmons and stuffed Trey Lance at the goal line that could have changed the outlook on this game. So, yeah, that's the San Francisco-Arizona game. Really fun game to watch, even though it was low scoring. Then Buffalo at Kansas City. This is where I have some apologizing to do because Buffalo looks incredible. Probably, I don't think I've been like this Buffalo hater. I feel like I'm pretty pro Buffalo. I was a huge Josh Allen guy coming out. But I did have them 6th in the power rankings last week, and I had Kansas City number 1. That's where I really need to apologize to everybody for, I guess, being late to the party on Kansas City, maybe not being that Super Bowl alpha this year. Now, there's a lot of time for them to right the ship here. They had no Chris Jones in this game, which I think is a huge difference maker for a defense that really basically depends on Chris Jones 6-7 times a game getting really quick pressure and forcing bad mistakes by quarterbacks under pressure that an opportunistic secondary can take advantage of. You take that out and there's virtually nothing there because like Tyrann Mathieu is super opportunistic as a defensive back, but he's not like a great cover player. And they don't really have anybody else that's exceptional either. So you have no pass rush, you have no secondary. That's a recipe for disaster. So I'm assuming Chris Jones is going to be back soon. I know he was like a game time decision for this one. It's definitely not time to panic about Kansas City, but you look at a defense that looks worse this year, clearly, and then an offense that is not as efficient as it's been in years past. And I think a lot of that falls on Mahomes. A lot of it falls on the execution of the playmakers. We've seen fumbles from the running backs, and from Tyreek Hill had a drop that led to a pick 6 in this game. Mahomes has still been outstanding this year, and he's probably still the best quarterback in the NFL. But the fact that I even have to put that probably before it kind of shows you that it just hasn't really been Kansas City's year. Now the schedule lightens up a little bit. I'm definitely not writing them out. I put them 6th in the power rankings this week. I still think they'd be favored against pretty much anybody in the NFL, but not so much the way I felt about that last week, where I thought they were going to steamroll the Bills just as they have, and I thought they were going to kind of right the ship on their season. They still very clearly have a lot of issues that they need to resolve. So I was wrong about Kansas City still being the best team in the NFL. I think they can get back there very quickly, and we've seen this team have slow starts, but it's going to take some time. And I I will say I'm still higher on Kansas City for what it's worth, because people think they're still not a top 10 team. They've had some really tough losses where things just haven't gone their way. But this is still the best offense in the NFL. That's just, they're making a few too many mistakes right now, and they got to clean it up. As for the Bills, let's save the best for the last in this game. This was a Game of Thrones for the Buffalo Bills, taking the throne in the AFC. This was a total statement win, going against a Kansas City team that had their number twice last year in two different ways. If you remember, there was was that a Tuesday game last year? I don't even remember, but it was a rainy game in Buffalo. Kansas City and just came in and just pounded the ball down their throats in Buffalo, I'm pretty sure, and Buffalo just couldn't hang. And then in the playoffs, AFC Championship, really no contest. But this year, the opposite happened, and Buffalo won in every phase of the game here in Kansas City. And this was, as I said, a statement game from the Bills. We have arrived. We are the best team in the AFC, no question. And that's what this was. Josh Allen was incredible. He came prepared. He executed, made plays, big-time throws down the field. Just a remarkably efficient performance from Josh Allen. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know he averaged 20 yards of completion, something insane. You've got the defense kind of playing this complete brand of football. This is the McDermott way, really. I feel like this Bills defense has never been predicated on superstars. They're the opposite of the Chiefs defense, where they're we want Chris Jones, Tyrann Mathieu to just make big plays. No, the Bills are we need everybody on this defense to give us a B-plus performance, and we're just going to frustrate the opponents. We're going to capitalize on any mistakes they make and play sound football, and that's exactly what they did. It's reminiscent of the Indianapolis Colts defense as well, but I think the Bills have a few more good players than the Colts and less weaknesses. Obviously, Tre'Davious White is a superstar. I'm comfortable saying that. And some of these other guys are starting to play more like star players, guys like Ed Oliver, Tremaine Edmonds. You do have the safeties who are star players, but ultimately this was a team win for the Bills, elevated by Josh Allen being the better quarterback in this game. So, huge win for the Bills. And I do want to remind Bills fans, even though they were mad at me last week, I'm not a Bills hater, and I'm going to take some victory laps on some Bills takes that I had coming into the year. Number one is Gregory Rousseau, at the very least, looks like he's going to be a player and an impact player, maybe at worst, he's going to be a B contributor, a B-level contributor to this front. And I'm going to take a victory lap because I do feel like I was, at least among the analysts that I follow and respect, I felt like I was all alone saying, no, Gregory Rousseau's a first-round talent. If he had that second season after he opted out because of COVID, I do think he would have been in more of that top 15 range. Sure, he's not a perfect player, but he's got some power. He's a really good kid. High level work ethic with incredible measurables. I thought his get off was severely underrated, and his potential to be a dominant bull rusher in this league. So he had a sack in this game, and he had the interception that was strictly that's part of why I like Gregory Rousseau, is how active and functional his arm length is. He has 36.5-inch arms. He's 6'6". But a lot of these guys at 6'6", they're skinny and get kind of bodied, and they don't use those arms in powerful ways. And obviously an interception, there's not power there, but for him to get off that block, track the ball, have the active hands and the what am I looking for? The hand-eye coordination as a receiver coming out of high school or a tight end, to be able to track that ball from Patrick Mahomes and intercept it just off of what is normally a batted ball, that's the kind of just overall athleticism and traits that I really liked about Gregory Rousseau, and you're starting to see it all come together. And so I'm going to take a little victory lap on Gregory Rousseau, looking like a good pick for the Bills. He's been an impactful player for them. He had a dominant performance against the Buffalo Bills, 8 pressures, 2 sacks. Now kind of changing the landscape of this game. he looks like a player. So I'm going to take a little bit of a victory lap on Gregory Rousseau. I took a lot of flack for being too high on him coming into the draft, and he looks like a good pick for the Bills. And then Dawson Knox was on my breakout players list on this podcast coming into the year. He was another prospect I really liked, was on my breakout list coming into the year, and he's been a game changer for the Bills. He's been like their best receiving threat ahead of Stephon Diggs. He's not a better player than Stephon Diggs, but he has been just game-changing for this offense. So just a couple victory laps, and I'm not a Bills hater. I'm happy to see this team come together and us to have something new in the AFC. I do truly believe the Bills are now the team to beat, and that's exciting. So there's your Bills-Chiefs wrap-up. I said we were going to spend more time on these early games. We're already 20 minutes in. We are going to speed up the pace, though, as we move forward here. So we have Chicago at Las Vegas next. And I really don't want to spend too much time on the Gruden deal. I just would rather talk about football. Obviously, I said it in the power rankings, like, Gruden's a shithead. He sucks. And it was, I think, the right move for the Raiders to move on from him. And that's really all I'm going to say about it. I want to focus on what this means for the Raiders this year from a football perspective and what it means for the future of the Raiders. I really do think this is going to have a dramatic impact on the Raiders team this season. Now, we've seen situations where you expect when the coach leaves or gets fired, you expect things to actually get worse before they get better. And they come out and play with kind of a fire under their ass and actually surprise you. We've seen that happen, and it's certainly possible here. They're promoting their special teams coach to be the interim head coach. Honestly, I don't expect that to happen. I think this team is probably going to fall apart here, especially based on how they've played over the last couple of weeks. Derek Carr, after I gave him all of the praise in the world, has really kind of gone back to, I don't want to say his old self, because I still think he's trying to make plays on third down, which was the big difference there, but it hasn't been there. He hasn't played very well. The offensive line is completely just decimated what this offense is capable of. Alex Leatherwood's been a disaster. They move him into guard. The right tackle situation still not any better with his backup. So the offense has totally taken a step back. And defensively, they've been better than I expected, and I think that will continue, but it's not a defense that can carry. And now you look at how the offensive line is playing, and you take Gruden out, who does a really good job of scheming guys open. I've always said Gruden's a really good offensive mind. I've always been impressed with his play calling, and I don't expect that to improve with John Gruden leaving here. So I'm really worried about this offense. It's nice that the defense has been better, but I'm just not counting on that group to carry this team. I think this is probably a 6 or a 7 win team when all is said and done. So I think that's how that impacts the Raiders this season. And then I want to ask the question of, is this actually an attractive spot for guys like Brian Dable, Joe Brady, Eric Bieniemy, the top head coaching candidates that you hear about? And my answer is kind of. I think it's attractive to get this franchise, the new stadium, the Raiders. It's the reason they were able to attract Gruden. Like, there is an element of prestige to being the head coach of the now Las Vegas Raiders. But they are a team that's very much stuck in purgatory. I think you have what you call a purgatory quarterback in Derek Carr, which isn't always a bad thing, but that's like Kirk Cousins. It's honestly a little bit of how I feel about Ryan Tannehill, even though Ryan Tannehill's playing great right now. But it's like you can have an amazing, you can have a really good team around a quarterback, and you just still don't feel great about them like winning you a Super Bowl. It's like the old Andy Dalton line, back when Andy Dalton was like exactly the 16th best quarterback in the NFL. Things just have to be perfect when Derek Carr is your quarterback if you want to win a Super Bowl. Like, yeah, Derek Carr, you can consistently be in the playoffs and have a good team and have a lot of fun and make your fans really happy with a Derek Carr as your quarterback. But if you're if you're Dable, for example, who I do think is the number one head coach candidate personally, because of what he's done with Josh Allen and how that offense has just perpetually surprised for now about 20 straight games. It's not appealing to go get Derek Carr as your quarterback. That's all I'm saying. I think Dable is waiting for an opportunity that, like Brandon Staley had, to go have Justin Herbert or to go work with Joe Burrow or something like that to get a, potentially elite game-changing quarterback. So I think from that perspective, it's going to be tough to draw the top candidates, even though it is a prestigious team. And the other thing is, there's still a lot of work to do with this roster. I think the defense has shown some improvements in areas that you want to see, but a large part of that is Casey Hayward breaking out or returning to glory. That's something you probably aren't expecting moving into the future. You have Richie Incognito at left guard, who hasn't really, I can't even remember how many games he's played, but behind him, it's not necessarily pretty. You have a bunch of these former first-round picks that are complete busts that you kind of need to replace. Arnett and Leatherwood. Luckily, the edge situation has played out with Furl, but it's not the most attractive spot. So the Raiders are, I think, now that Gruden's gone, because they did seem to be building something under Gruden in a weird way, in kind of a roundabout way. I think they've taken a step back into total purgatory, like Minnesota Vikings level purgatory. And I don't even know if they're as good as the Vikings, but I just don't know if it's an attractive spot. And that puts their next 5-year window in a really weird place. If the ownership had the gumption to say, we'll blow this whole thing up. We'll trade away Casey Hayward. We'll trade away Ngakoue and maybe even Darren Waller, who's not young. That'd be a little more bold, but if they loaded up on picks and said, we're going to hit rock bottom before we build up, definitely trade away Derek Carr, I think that'd maybe be even a more attractive spot if you could get the ownership to commit to a 4 or 5 year rebuild. I think that'd be ideal for Raiders Super Bowl hopes. Otherwise, you might end up with just a decent coach and a decent team and about a 500 record for the next 4 years or so. That's really where I think this is heading. And that sucks. That really sucks for the Raiders fans. I can imagine that's the worst spot to be as a fan. So that's my outlook for the Raiders and how I think things change there. As for the Bears, another team that's in just a super weird window. So they win this game, by the way. Defense was outstanding. Khalil Mack, Robert Quinn looks great. The secondary is kind of coming together a little bit better. And they're just running the ball, doing the whole run the ball, play defense thing. Using Justin Fields' kind of threat as a runner, even if he's not running a ton himself, just kind of using the idea that he can keep it and rip off a 30-yard, using that to help their inside zone game a little bit, because you have to keep that backside edge honest with Justin Fields. There's an element to Justin Fields' presence, just as any quarterback with running abilities, it does improve the run game. It's one of the more proven just facts about football. It's a numbers point. It's a big reason that the Patriots' run game hasn't been the same without Cam Newton, I believe. So there is that. And if that's their approach, fine. We're going to use Fields as this guy that he's had an average of 19 dropbacks the last 2 weeks. 19 dropbacks the last 2 weeks, average. Justin Herbert hasn't had a game under 40 dropbacks, to put that in perspective. They're literally putting training wheels on the offense with Justin Fields, and he gets an NA grade. Now, no turnover worthy plays in this game. The run game was good. This is a formula that can beat a reeling Raiders team. Now, is this going to work against the Green Bay Packers this weekend? I mean, the Packers are depleted with injuries right now, but probably not. It's certainly not going to work against a healthy Packers team or a Rams team or anything of any note. I just don't get... It's so hard to ask, is this style offense, because it's a toddler offense. It's a preschool offense that they're running right now. Get rid of the ball quick, run the ball. They've had some shots in there, and to Fields' credit, he's been really good when they do go downfield, but it's been on more like gimmicky stuff. Not necessarily like, okay, it's 3rd and 9, and he's making a beautiful read and a beautiful throw downfield. That's not really when the big plays have been there, the very few that are there with Fields. But anyway, I think it's a tough balance to ask, does this help Fields long term or is this hurting Fields long term? I don't have an answer for that, but I think it could be either way. I don't know. I really honestly don't know about the Chicago Bears in this Justin Fields situation. It's incredibly fascinating. He's not going to be their coach next year. I wish I had a stronger take for you, but it just doesn't sit well with me how they're using Fields right now. It's like, for me, I suppose the take here is, but I don't even know how strongly I feel about this, but I suppose the take is either let Fields run a real offense or put Andy Dalton back in. Because, yes, they've helped the running game with Fields in there, but actually they're a much better offense so far this year when Andy Dalton's in there. He's been kind of, if you want to ask what Matt Nagy's scheme is when it opens up, it is the spread coast offense. Get rid of the ball quick, make quick decisions, and let the playmakers make plays. That's the opposite of what Justin Fields was built to do. He wants to hold on to the ball, look for big plays, and they're in this weird mishmash. It's kind of a mess offensively right now, but it has worked for them. The last 2 weeks against the Lions and the Raiders, they've ran the ball well, Fields is taking care of the football, and they're playing great defense. We're going to have to continue to just kind of see where this goes, but I don't know, man. I don't know. Let's move on. Indianapolis at Baltimore. Another crazy game. I want to start with Indianapolis because Wentz was good in this game, and I think Wentz, kind of going back throughout the rest of the season so far, he has been pretty good. He's not a top 10 quarterback. He's not the MVP guy he was in 2017 or whatever, but he has quietly, very quietly, been a really good, top 20 quarterback in the NFL. The turnover worthiness that was, I said, a big part, the mess that was Doug Peterson, it's almost completely evaporated. He's playing in structure, he's throwing the ball away, and he's not playing hero ball, even though his team's losing. And there have been reasons for him to feel like he needs to do that. They have, in a lot of ways, restored a lot of what Carson Wentz is. Now, he's been banged up. The offensive line's been a mess. I don't love their playmakers. They're getting T.Y. Hilton back this week, which should help. But that's great news for the Colts because you're probably giving up your first-round pick, right? Well, if you have a top 20 quarterback that can extend plays and has an element of upside to him down the road, it's going to hurt a lot less when you give that pick to the Eagles. So that's good for the Colts. The other good thing for the Colts is their defense is playing outstanding. They have one of the best run defenses in the league. Matt Eberflus continues to me to be like, he should. If you want a defensive guy, Matt Eberflus should be at the top of your list as far as a head coach candidate. He gets this team to play incredibly sound. And they matched up well with the Ravens. And we'll talk about the Ravens and kind of how this game went for them. But they won this game for 55 minutes and then blew it. That's really what happened. They missed field goal, the overtime coin toss deal. You guys know, if you've been around this channel for any amount of time, how I feel about overtime rules. I think they're the biggest detractor from the NFL currently in a league where we have teams going for it on fourth down feels like 3 times more than they ever have. All of the rules leaning offense, points per game, yards per attempt, higher than they've ever been. It's truly an offensive league, and the rules say that, one team can win the game without proving that they can make a stop. That's what always bugs me about the just make a stop. Well, it's objectively harder to make a stop in the league nowadays, especially in a game like this where the defense is freaking gassed. Why don't the Ravens have to prove that they can make a stop? I hate these rules, and I think the Colts got screwed in this game. Yes, they could have won in regulation, but so could the Ravens. The Ravens could have not gotten down by 16 points with 5 minutes to go. But it should be a clean slate, and it's not. So that's how I feel about overtime rules. Not going to get too pent up about it here, but the Colts, this was a good loss for the Colts. I know it hurts emotionally because you blew it, but they looked really good as a team. Jonathan Taylor was amazing as well. Quentin Nelson should be back some point this season. Eric Fisher, you hope, continues to get more healthy. But the Colts' next 5 games here, so the Colts are 1-4. Their next 5 games, Houston should be a win. They have at San Francisco and at home against Tennessee. Those are winnable games. I would say they probably split those in all likelihood. And then you have the Jets and the Jags. So they play really 3 of the worst teams in the NFL over the next 5 weeks. If they can win a game at San Francisco or at home against Tennessee, they're going to be 5-5 getting healthy. That can be a playoff team very quickly. So, yes, this loss hurts, and ultimately this might be what keeps them out of the playoffs. They're going to want that win, I think, down the stretch, especially if the Ravens are in the wild card picture, although they seem to be a step ahead of the Colts. But, yeah, I think this is the first time I've felt better about the future of the Colts, who have been just kind of like sluggish on, I suppose. But let's talk about the Ravens. Lamar, man. Whoa. That was... So I'm going to use an analogy. I hope you guys are Avengers fans. This was officially like the scenes where Thanos gets the last 2 stones for his Infinity Glove. Because Lamar before, he had the athleticism stone, he had the IQ stone, his good decision maker, processor, all that stuff, and he had the arm talent stone. To me, what he's been lacking to become like this, what we saw on Monday Night Football and what we've seen the last few weeks that I have been talking about, seeing this kind of develop in front of my eyes in the Lions game, the Broncos game, now this. It's been kind of building up to this moment, I think, these last few weeks, and I'm there with Lamar, I think. But I think he's acquired the pocket presence stone and the accuracy stone. Not that he's been you guys know how I felt, like where Lamar deep and outside the numbers, that's where Lamar's accuracy has really been underwhelming. The last 3 weeks, it's been phenomenal, maybe the best in the league. He looks uncoverable, undefendable. It's been so fun to watch. He's just going off right now. I think this was an MVP night for him, obviously. Right in the mix there with, I think, Kyler Murray, which, how ironic is that? That's been this big debate, is who's better, and now those might be the 2 MVP frontrunners. That's going to be a narrative that I think continues to develop, is comparing these 2 quarterbacks, which that's a good problem to have, is whoever you pick, you're winning, I think. Yeah, man. I mean, Lamar is a passer, beating teams the last few weeks. It's different. And I had a couple tweets that I want to reinforce here on the podcast before we move on. Number one, I said that I hated the Ravens' game plan coming in because they have not been running the ball well. I do think people make jokes about oh, the league figured out Lamar Jackson. No, Lamar figured out the league. I love that. I will say the league did figure out the read option stuff for the most part. A lot of the schematic ways teams have been defending the Ravens have seriously neutered the read option part. And then the next question was, is Lamar going to change his game? And the answer is yes. Yes, he's going to change his game. But there is an element of truth to the league figured out Lamar. They didn't figure out Lamar. They figured out the Ravens offense. Yet, coming in, they kept going to the read option. 3rd and 2, early on. They were trying to run the ball against one of the best run defenses in the league, one of the more disciplined run defenses in the league, who have these uber athletic, lengthy edge guys that can help on the read option. Really good like nickel defenders, guys like I actually don't know if Kari Willis played in this game, but number 23, Kenny Moore. Like, that's how you defend, and linebackers too. Like, that's how you defend this read option. Scrape exchange using 2 contained defenders, really good interior guys. You need to have guys like Grover Stewart and Buckner who can kind of by themselves eliminate the inside element of the read option. Just, that's not how I would have attacked the Indianapolis Colts, especially with how Lamar is passing the ball lately and how bad the Colts pass defense really kind of is, especially with the injuries in the secondary. So I absolutely hated the way the Ravens came into this game, and they got down because of their game plan. So I do think you can be critical of Frank Reich for that. It's not Frank Reich, Greg Roman and Harbaugh for that. Moving forward, they need to realize this is Lamar's offense. Now, you can still have the read option stuff, and maybe his ability as a passer opens things up more in the run game moving forward, but it's time. It's time. You have Marquise Brown, by the way, is uncoverable. The only one that can stop Marquise Brown is himself if he drops the football, but he's quietly been one of the best receivers in the NFL, especially as a deep threat. He's been the best. Mark Andrews has returned to 2019 form. You get Rashad Bateman back here within the next couple of weeks. Sammy Watkins is making an impact. Devin Duvernay looks awesome. You got freaking playmakers and a quarterback playing like possibly the best quarterback in the NFL right now. Knock it off. Freaking pass the football, Baltimore. It's time. I don't think you have to completely erase the read option stuff, but open it up. Open it up. I think their game plan almost lost them this game. So, good stuff. Good stuff from that game. What a Monday Night Football game. We've only talked about like 4 games. Jesus. Okay. On to Cleveland at the Chargers. Okay. The Browns' passing game is frustrating because I don't know what's missing. Baker, I like. I think he's a really good quarterback. I think Odell is awesome. They have playmakers. They have offensive line. Granted, they've got some injuries right now. I think Kevin Stefanski's really smart. But they seem to really... They're just uncomfortable in like what you call traditional passing downs. 3rd and long is usually how I describe that. They just don't inspire any confidence that Baker's going to step up in the pocket, the receiver's going to come in on the right timing, the right route's going to be called against the right coverage, and they're going to execute. Everything on 3rd down is tough for the Browns, and that's frustrating because I think they have the talent to do it. So that was kind of a takeaway in this game, but otherwise the Browns played really well offensively. I mean, their run game is still one of the best in the league. I'm not selling the Browns. I think they're still stacked. And they're a little beat up right now. And then defensively, I don't think they're that well coached. They're going for this kind of modern quarters defense, bend don't break style. Well, the bend don't break thing didn't work against the Chargers. 47 points, a ton of big plays, and it was busted coverages. So if you're going to run quarters or cover 6, any element of quarters match or cover 3 match, the communication needs to be on point. And the Chargers exposed their communication. They had just multiple breakdowns in the secondary that led to just huge plays. They also had a bunch of penalties in this game. I think the defense is going to be fine. They were elite the last 2 weeks. They have so much talent. But some of the coaching stuff, the communication stuff, maybe just going to take some time. They have a really young secondary, so maybe that could be what we're seeing, is these guys not necessarily knowing how to pass off these deep posts and stuff, which is really what can break down a cover 4 very quickly and seriously lead to, like, if you have a coverage bust in cover 3 or cover 2, at least there's going to be someone in proximity. But you see that touchdown to Mike Williams where Herbert hit him on the post from the opposite, felt like about 70 yards away. But if you don't pass off those deep posts and the opposite side of the field comes down on digs or hitches or flat routes or anything, you're going to get a receiver literally with nobody within 40 yards. And that can't happen if you're going to run a lot of quarters. So they got to clean that stuff up. It's obviously not a good problem to have, but it's a very fixable problem. The other thing I have on this game, why did they play this? So Myles Garrett played 42 out of 60 snaps on the right side against Rashawn Slater, who showed yet again that he can handle lengthy power rushers. Really good game for Rashawn Slater. That was the thing on him coming out, was he's got shorter arms. Well, it turns out it doesn't matter for Rashawn Slater. He had a very solid game against the defensive player of the year. Now, Garrett did get a sack. That was the play with the chip block where Rashawn Slater, as a rookie, was like, hey, running backs, I don't need your help. All you're doing is screwing me up, because he chips Myles Garrett and almost like helps him get by. And there's actually stats that show that chip blocks can be used against the offense, like can hurt the offense. So what frustrated me about this game is Storm Norton, XFL legend, great name, not a good tackle, unfortunately, not yet at least. He's been a problem for the Chargers, and Jadeveon Clowney did not play in this game. So the Cleveland Browns put Myles Garrett over on Rashawn Slater. I disagree with that strategy. Put Myles Garrett on the guy that's been forcing Herbert to run for his life and see if he can wreck the game. And they didn't. They played over 2/3 of his snaps. They put him over on Rashawn Slater, and they were rolling out Talk McKinley and Joe something against Storm Norton, and Norton held his own. So I disagree with that strategy. The communication in the secondary, they need to clean some stuff up. Now, if they had Clowney in this game, maybe that would have been a better strategy. I don't know. Browns have a lot of good going on, but they also have some stuff to clean up. And then I have a similar feeling on the Chargers. So I'd like to think that I've earned the respect of Chargers fans. I've been very pro-Chargers. Obviously, I didn't like Herbert coming into the draft, but very quickly realized how wrong I was, and I haven't gone back to that. I'm in on Herbert. So I'd like to think that if anybody was going to buy all in on the Chargers and say they're top of the AFC, start picking them for the Super Bowl, if anyone was going to do that, I'd like to think it was going to be me. But there's still a lot of convincing they need to do to me. It's not Herbert. I mean, Herbert's easily top 10 quarterback. I think he's in the top 5 quarterback conversation at this point. He's been incredible. And I think he's kind of the big reason that they're where they are. But it's a lot of other stuff. And it's possible that the Chargers have just hurt me too many times. But it feels like every week there's little stuff that I'm just I don't like that. And there was more of that this week. I will say they had some, and this is where I'm going to start to piss off Chargers fans. And I wanted to preface by saying no, I love the Chargers. I want to see them win a Super Bowl this year. I'd be stoked. I love so many of their players. But they got 77 penalty yards in this game. Some of the calls I didn't agree with, and it's not like they were first down penalties. These were 3rd and long, 4th down penalties, game-changing stuff, what you typically would call bailout penalties. I think the right side of their offensive line is a recipe for disaster. Ode Abushi, who's been good, unfortunately, ACL injury. Brian Bulaga is Brian Bulaga. I don't think they're going to get much from him. Their run defense is currently the worst in the NFL. They missed some kicks in this game. they've cleaned them up a little bit. But early on, they had like a bunch of pre-snap procedural penalties. I'm just saying I'm hesitant on the Chargers as a Super Bowl team. Now, I have Super Bowl futures on the Chargers. I love this team, and I want to be all in. I'm just still, because like I rank the Chiefs ahead of the Chargers still. Just still not ready to commit on the Chargers being like as high as other people are on them, basically. I do think they're in the top tier of NFL teams, which to me is the top 10 teams in the league. I think they're very capable of winning a Super Bowl. But there's just every week, there's little stuff where I'm like, they can't do that down the stretch. So they're amazing. Huge win for them. They continue to climb. They continue to earn that confidence. Herbert, week after week, just showing that he is elite. Can we say that now? I think it's worth entertaining. But yeah, both these teams, like a lot of good, a lot to clean up. I don't know. This game left me kind of uneasy watching it. So many just mistakes on both sides of the ball that led to huge points. So then we got Green Bay at Cincinnati. This is going to be the last game I talk about before I take a little break. So I was at this game, still not entirely sure if I was in a dream or a nightmare or if that was reality. I don't know if I'll ever go to a more weird football game. I think I saw that there's never been that many missed kicks for the win, or at least to take the lead in the final 2 minutes plus overtime ever. Like, holy buckets. Everyone in that stadium was just pulling their hair out. It was about 30% Packer fans, Bengals fans. It was a packed house, super fun game. But it was getting rowdy. It was one of those games where, and maybe I just had some good people around me, but it was one of those games where, and I was in the season ticket section for the Bengals, so that probably helped. But like, shout out to the fans I was by. Like, good sports, like very good camaraderie. It's always fun. And it turned into one of those games where like I was constantly, doing this, talking to the people around, like, what's going on? Like, the guy behind me was like, Crosby's done. Get him out of here. Like, it's just a super fun game. Wild turning of events. Both these teams, just neither of them wanted to win with these missed kicks. So if you miss this game and you have Game Pass, it's worth like going back to see how the end of this game played out. Because it wasn't just the missed kicks. It was like Burrow and Rodgers kind of like alternating moments. So, yeah, just crazy end of the game. I don't know if I have like a lot of takeaways from this game. I think from Green Bay's perspective, every win they have, especially on the road, but against like real competition, with the amount of injuries they have, is just kind of like a survival moment for them. They're kind of a tough team to look at right now. Like, Rodgers isn't playing his best football, but he's making like the highs from Rodgers are still MVP Rodgers. The consistency aspect of it, the playing and structure that won him the MVP last year, that's been off a little bit. There have been plays where he is kind of holding on to the ball, playing a little bit of that hero ball stuff. It's not a concern. And they sure as hell don't win this game or the Niners game without Rodgers. But, he's not as good as he was last year, or he hasn't been yet. But he's still been awesome. What was I saying? Like, they just, seriously, their two best linemen are out. Elton Jenkins, David Bakhtiari. They're out. MVS, I think, can't believe I'm saying this, they actually miss Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They don't have much of a deep ball aspect to them. And I think getting him back will really help, because you got Cobb, who's been great, awesome pickup. Adams is still the number one receiver in the NFL, just killing it, despite getting double teamed more than anybody else, like true double team. Now in this game, it was a lot of zone, and LaFleur and Rodgers did such a good job to kind of scheme up Adams and get him open. This was just a clinic from Davante Adams. And it turns out him plus Rodgers, plus a good run game and a good defense was enough to win this game. So, like, the Packers are very good. They're very balanced. Even Kevin King played well in this game. but they have not reached their ceiling yet because they're going to get so many like ultra superstars back, right? Like David Bakhtiari, ultra superstar. Jair Alexander is an ultra superstar. Zadarius Smith is a superstar. I would say Elton Jenkins is a superstar. So they're going to get a lot back and look a lot better than they have. And I think it's a testament to LaFleur and to Rodgers for just finding ways to win games until they can reach that version of themselves. And they have another tough test in Chicago, another game I'm going to be at this week. That's 5 straight NFL games, and then I'm done for the year. But yeah, it was a good win for the Packers and a good loss for the Bengals. Like, they hung in there against a good Packers team. Burrow played excellent football until the pick in overtime. Just weird play. Like, it felt like the Bengals had momentum and Jamar Chase, Burrow, like they had this awesome connection, and he's trying to check it down to Boyd, and it was almost like a choke moment from Burrow. I think he thought Boyd was going to kind of improv and come back inside, but I also don't think Burrow even saw Campbell right there waiting for it. So the interception should have lost them the game. Crosby missed the kick. Then Burrow gets the ball back. He leads a nice drive, drops a dime to Jamar Chase down the sideline, sets up another long field goal, and they miss it. And then the Packers come back the other way where Rodgers clutches it up on 3rd and long to Cobb. So I think overall I haven't changed much on how I feel about these teams, but just a wild game. I do have 2 more observations that I just kind of noticed from Green Bay, and it hit me that I've thought this way about other teams too. So the pre-snap jet sweeps are everywhere in the NFL now. But am I the only one that's like, why don't they use those more? Because everyone does it, but they never actually give the ball to the guy. And it's always these super athletic receivers. And the Cardinals this week did. Was it the Cardinals? No, it was the Titans. The Titans did it, which is the same offense that Green Bay runs. They gave the ball twice in the same drive to DeAndre Carter, just super athletic guy. They did the pop pass or the jet sweep handoff. And it's why don't teams do that more? It feels like 80% of the time they're just doing it to move defenders and not actually going to use the jet sweep. I feel like so many teams could benefit from utilizing that jet sweep more often. In Green Bay, most notably, I don't think they've actually, maybe once to Aaron Jones against Detroit they did, and I think they got a touchdown out of it. I think Green Bay should use that much more. You have Amari Rodgers, who broke a ton of tackles in college. You got Jones, who can do that stuff. I think the Packers especially could really benefit from using that jet sweep more often. And then another observation that's really come up across the league this year that's just kind of a cool football guy observation is teams have started to use their running backs in more of that H-back, fullback spot in pass protection, where they're doing it to protect against these linebacker blitzes. And you kind of have to guess right for it to work because there's not a lot of room for them to adjust. But it hit me that this is a really smart way to get better pass protection out of your running backs, because if you think about it, if you're pass protecting from shotgun next to the quarterback, you're stepping up about a yard, and that linebacker has gotten a full, if you're accounting for the linebacker, and that's how it works, you're communicating your protection. You're saying, if this guy comes, the running back's got him, right? 52's the mic. That means if he blitzes, let him go. Offensive line, the running back's going to pick him up. So instead of having him block from shotgun, where the linebacker's coming free, getting an 8-yard start before they hit the running back, and how often do you see these 250-pound linebackers, 240-pound guys, coming in full speed on a 210-pound running back, They blow them up and destroy the play. It happens all the time. Well, now teams are, and the smart quarterbacks, Rodgers, I will need to note what other teams are really doing this. But the smart quarterbacks are making adjustments pre-snap and saying, okay, Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, Jermaine Pratt's coming or Logan Wilson's coming. I want you to sit in this gap right kind of behind the offensive lineman, meet him at the line of scrimmage. That way you're in a better position, and then if you do get beat, you're not right next to me. I have room to navigate. It's a really smart adjustment and just a modern trend that I am seeing around the league. Just a note for the football guys out there, keep an eye on these running backs coming up at the line of scrimmage. And I think it's a really good improvement to blitz protection. So I think that's cool. My only other note on this game is that Stokes versus Jamar Chase was a really fun matchup. Jamar Chase won for the most part in the Stokes versus Jamar Chase. We're talking about Eric Stokes, rookie corner for the Packers, against Jamar Chase, number 6 overall pick, superstar out of LSU. Jamar Chase is awesome. He's been one of the best receivers in the NFL as a rookie. Do it all, catching, sideline action now, deep threat, over the middle of the field, run after catch. He's awesome. He had another play that could have been an explosive, 60-yard touchdown that they ended up reversing. But Eric Stokes got his. So Stokes was targeted 8 times in this game. It felt like all of them were against Jamar Chase. Probably weren't all, but Stokes gave up 5 completions for 84 yards with a pass breakup. But he was sticking with Jamar Chase and looked like a good corner. When they get Jair Alexander back, Stokes does look like a good pick for Green Bay. So that's a win for the defense. And even Kevin King played well in this game. So just a lot of little takeaways from this game, but my opinions on the Packers and the Bengals haven't changed all that much. Okay, I'm going to take a break. And then when we come back, it's going to be a little bit more of a speed round through these games. And then we will get into the Patreon mailbag. So we have 10 games left, and I mentioned kind of speed rounding through this. I'm going to be heading out of town to Chicago on Friday, so another condensed short work week for me, and I still want to get to studs and duds to get that up tomorrow, and I got to get my picks up on Patreon. So I'm gonna kind of work my way through these a little quicker. These games just either weren't as interesting or they didn't necessarily surprise me or change my perspective on these teams as much. But we're going to get through these and then we'll do the mailbag. So we got the Rams at Seattle. It kind of went the way I expected, more or less. It's a tough matchup for Seattle. We saw this last year in the playoffs. The Rams, the way they kind of play defense is they take the top off and kind of force you to do stuff underneath. That's really not how Russ likes to play football. You also have the Aaron Donald factor. You have the fact that the Rams have one of the few corners in the NFL that can actually somewhat handle DK Metcalf. So it's just a tough matchup for Seattle. They lost. And for the Rams, they are a better, more complete team that can win in more ways than Seattle. This wasn't really a Matthew Stafford game. He's had some big games, some MVP moments so far this year. That wasn't so much this game. It was a good run game and good defense and walk out of town with a win. So good team win for the Rams, kind of getting back on track a little more here after losing to the Cardinals last week. And then Russ is injured. Russ is out 4 to 6 weeks. That's obviously huge news. Very well could do Seattle in. They're in a very difficult division, and they're just not the kind of team, I think, that can steal some wins with a backup. Now, Geno was fun to watch in there. He played well, and it could be that, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this because it is a thought I had. Geno came into the league at a weird time. He was kind of tagged as a college-style quarterback, right? Oh, he runs a spread offense. His game won't translate to the NFL level. That was, 6-7 years ago? How much has that changed in the last 2 or 3 years where it's like, okay, good. He runs a spread offense. He's going to be doing the same stuff that we do because the NFL has completely gotten up to, caught up with college football, if you will. So there's that aspect. But also, we spent a lot of time talking about how sometimes quarterbacks just need a lot of time to sit and develop. And Geno has been kind of hanging around. He's got a lot of talent. He's got a good arm. He's accurate. He's athletic. He's produced at times. So I don't know. I'm just certainly excited to watch Geno, and he'll be kind of a case study as far as the whole what maybe could have looked a little different if Geno had different circumstances. He also ended up on the Jets, so there's also that. But they probably won't be doing much with Geno. We're going to get to find out on Sunday Night Football. And this is a huge test for Pete Carroll. They got to kind of keep their season afloat, steal some wins with Geno until Russ can get back if this team wants to be a playoff team, but it's not looking great. Okay, Jets at Atlanta. Kyle Pitts. What else is there really to say about Atlanta? Their defense has played okay now in a couple games, but it's been against the Jets and the Giants. So, okay, how much is that you have good defense? How much is it you're just playing a bad offense? But Kyle Pitts arriving and establishing, what this offense should look like, which is feeding Kyle Pitts. This dude's a monster. Get him more involved over the middle of the field. Find creative ways to get him open deep, run after catch. This is the reason why you can justify that 4th overall pick on him. So that's great for Atlanta to see that happening, and then you can plug Ridley back in on top of what you're doing with Pitts. Don't let Ridley come back and go back to kind of force-feeding Ridley, because I just think the offense is better with the mismatch of Pitts, and Ridley is the route runner type, but they were really, to me, force-feeding Ridley in a lot of ways. And there's just not a lot to take away from Atlanta this year. It's kind of a lost season. I've talked about their kind of weird purgatory status of their organization, but man, was it fun to watch their big investment, Kyle Pitts, look like that dude. Zach Wilson for the Jets. I had my sister's wedding on Saturday night, and I didn't get up at 9:30 Eastern to watch this game, so I had to watch it back. But I did see Twitter kind of roasting Zach Wilson. I still think he's the most hated on quarterback. Now, he has not played well, but I felt that way coming into the draft too. I feel like he's actually the guy, not Justin Fields, that the majority of people like to pick on. Because everyone's like, oh, everybody hates Justin Fields. Well, I don't see a lot of Justin Fields haters out there. I see a lot of Zach Wilson haters out there. Wilson made some bad mistakes in this game. He threw a pick in this game where he's, gluing in on the free safety. It was cover 2. He wanted to hit the hole shot, but he's staring it down, waiting for the receiver to come open, and Hawkins, the second-year safety out of Cal, just glued in on it and picked him off. There was a couple other inaccurate throws in this game, but it wasn't like a horrific game from Zach Wilson, I didn't think. It was kind of like the Trey Lance game, really, where, there's a couple plays that were bad that he needs to improve on, but there was still a lot of good from Zach Wilson in this game. It was also kind of a weird game where the Jets got down 17-0 immediately, and then the game was just kind of over. But Wilson moved the ball in this game. He made some big throws, and that's really all I have to say. It wasn't a good game, but it wasn't this horrific, oh my God, Zach Wilson's already a bust game. No, he was fine. He looked like a lot of these other rookie quarterbacks. It hasn't really been there for the rookies this year like it was last year, as far as them looking like top 15, top 10 quarterbacks right away. We kind of got spoiled with Burrow and Herbert. Okay, Denver at Pittsburgh. I picked Pittsburgh to win this game because it kind of just felt like everything was going against Pittsburgh for a couple weeks. It felt like they were going to have this kind of gotta-have-it mentality, coming home, T.J. Watt healthy, and they did. They executed. They played a great game. I think this was a good matchup. These two teams are pretty tight. I actually thought Denver played a little better than you would have thought before watching the game, but Pittsburgh just made big plays. Deontay Johnson is unbelievable. I mean, he's he's not in the top 10 wide receiver conversation yet, but it does make you wonder, like, what would he look like without Big Ben and, like, a better quarterback? Because he gets open. No drops this year. He led the league in drops last year, so he's clearly worked on his hands. And that's always been the only thing with Deontay Johnson. He is genuinely one of the best separators at the position in the NFL, which is the number one most valuable asset that a receiver can have. So he's incredible as a deep threat, a run after catch guy, a third down option to get open. Chase Claypool is just a make a play, get me a bucket receiver for Big Ben. He had a beautiful run after catch in this game. He had a dominating one-on-one jump ball win. And yeah, these two playmakers plus Najee Harris, they got the run game going. The offensive line actually played pretty good in this game. That's a nice little triangle offense there. Johnson, Claypool, Najee Harris. And I actually am going to get a little takey here. I think this offense might be a little better off without Juju Smith-Schuster. Not to disrespect Juju, but I think Juju's lack of explosiveness and his kind of like chemistry with Big Ben, because Big Ben is a bit of a stubborn receiver, I think this offense can actually have more of an identity and be a little more explosive without Juju. I think Juju in a different situation where he is a wide receiver too, he's a possession guy, but I'd rather go to Chase Claypool who can give you big plays than Juju, you know what I mean? And Chase Claypool like kind of won them this game. So it sounds terrible, but I actually think the Steelers offense is better off and will run more efficiently without Juju because it's just one less piece that is there to kind of screw stuff up for them. Again, sounds terrible, but this is a good formula against a really good Broncos defense, and they made plays, and Big Ben was still not great. He tried to throw a couple picks in this game, but he was fine. And the defense for Pittsburgh returned to kind of that really good status up front. Denver didn't play that bad either. You know, they didn't make the plays they needed to on defense to win this game, but Teddy Bridgewater was making some pretty impressive throws in this game. Tim Patrick continues to just be a super reliable intermediate target. Cortland Sutton was good in this one. And Bridgewater was making some plays. He kind of got them back in this game. I didn't know this before I rewatched it, but they actually had 4th and like 3 down by 8 with like no time left. They were this close to tying this thing up. So I do think, you know, Denver actually played a pretty good game. Pittsburgh it was a little more of a gotta have it game, and they showed up. Detroit at Minnesota. This game should not have been as close as it was. You know, Minnesota was really kind of handling their business all game. Their pass rush has kind of woken up. I mean, the Everson Griffin signing, how big was that for Minnesota? I mean, that was a huge weak point coming in. I know DJ Wanham had a sack in this game, but he just hasn't been that starting caliber guy yet. He still is developing, I think. So to get Everson Griffin in there as a Band-Aid opposite of Danielle Hunter, that's helped their pass rush. And their secondary's been okay. You know, I like what Patrick Peterson has done for them. Mackenzie Alexander played well in this game, or at least made a couple plays. And then you got a good safety duo with Harry and the Xavier Woods. It's tough. I think the announcers have said it a couple times. People want to call him Xavier Rhodes, but it's Xavier Woods. He's been solid. So, like, it's a good defense. They've quietly played really well against the Browns, the Seahawks, now the Lions. Not as impressive, but the defense is playing well for Minnesota. Kirk made some great throws to save this game, but really it was penalties late in this game kind of gifted a drive to Detroit, and then Minnesota coughed up the football, and before you knew it, Detroit had scored 11 points and took the lead. You'd rather see Kirk play a more like good, a better game from start to finish. But at the same time, the Vikings just kind of ran the ball. It felt like they ran the ball 40 times in this game. I don't know what the exact number was, but you know, they just kept handing the ball off to Madison. They're like, our defense is playing well. We'll punt it if we have to. And then Detroit just kind of made some magic happen at the end, like they've done a couple times this year. And just cool to see Dan Campbell like pouring his heart out because, he's the football guy. He comes into the office with 10 Red Bulls, and he's just such a likable coach. I don't know if there's a character in the league right now that so many people just want to see succeed. And he's done a good job with this Detroit team. I think he's certainly earned a year two with, another full offseason under his belt. I still don't know like what his upside is as like an X's and O's guy, but he could be like just an elite CEO type of coach, like a Harbaugh type. So that has its limits, I do believe, but it's still, I mean, how can you not like Dan Campbell? And his team is, I would say, exceeded expectations. Even though the record isn't there, they have been in every single game against some good teams. Minnesota, Baltimore, Green Bay, they had the lead at half. They almost came back and beat San Francisco. Like, they are right there in, like, all of these games. Even the Bears game, they kind of came back. So, yeah, it was a weird game that felt over, and then it wasn't. Yeah, let's move on to Miami, Tampa Bay. This is a master class of offense. Like, just seriously, so much credit to go around. Obviously, Tom Brady, I'll start there because Brady fans are going to want you to start there. He's been awesome. He's maybe playing his best football. There's, obviously the 2007 season or whatever. But it's very clear. Like, when you put an elite surrounding situation around Tom Brady, he is going to get about the most out of everybody. It's kind of the opposite of these more playmaker type quarterbacks where, like, they're going to kind of ride a line, whether they have elite playmakers or not. It's always going to help to have better help. But if you got guys that can create and make other guys better, they're always going to play at a pretty high level. Whereas Brady, it's like he's so, he is the system, right? Like, when you have the best receiving core in NFL history, probably because Antonio Brown's like the third or fourth best receiver in the NFL this year on top of Godwin and Evans and Gronk, you have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, you have a very good play caller, and then you have Brady who he's literally doing exactly what the quarterback is supposed to do on every play. So, like, he's got time to execute, the receivers are open and really good after the catch, and really good at catching the ball. And then you have a quarterback that more than anybody is getting it out on time and doing everything, like, technically speaking, that he's supposed to do. That's why I said it's a master class. Like, if you want to teach what NFL offense is supposed to look like at its best, show them this game. Quarterbacking was methodical. The receivers were dominant. The offensive line was dominant. They ran the ball. The play calling was great. They had one punt, no fumbles, one drop. They had over 400 passing yards and 100 rushing yards against a good Dolphins defense. So, like, this to me was kind of Tampa Bay putting their foot back down. Like, nope, we're still the best team in the NFL. Yeah, our defense has some injuries in the secondary, but look at this. Look at what we can achieve offensively. It's unbelievable. As for Miami, this is like literally the worst case, is that they lose, but they don't lose because Jacoby Brissett is their quarterback. Jacoby was actually pretty good in this game, believe it or not. To the point where, like, I don't know if Tua, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I still think you obviously go back to Tua and you got to see what you have there and all that stuff. But if you wanted hope for the Dolphins, it's, okay, the defense is playing good. We're figuring some things out offensively, and we're finally getting Jacoby Brissett off the field. Jacoby wasn't the problem in this game. It was a lack of pass rush, offensive line, and they're not a good team. They're not a good football team. They don't have the roster talent to hang with the best roster in the NFL. So Tua should be coming back, and it's time to truly evaluate Tua. I personally think the Dolphins' season is toast. I don't see them turning this thing around and making a wild card run. I think they can win some games with Tua and figure out a little bit about themselves, but we're in, like, holy crap territory for the Dolphins as far as do they have the right, not just quarterback, but the right GM, the right coach. I mean, Flores, I still like Flores. I'm not saying they should fire him, but this has been just a tragic season for the Dolphins. And, it's been with a backup quarterback for the majority of it. So we need to see what this looks like with Tua. That's really what this is about. But yeah, they didn't lose because of Jacoby Brissett. They lost because Brian Flores' defense got obliterated. Okay, New England at Houston. This is almost like no time to spend on this game. It was a weird game. Davis Mills played well, so that's good for Houston. Good comeback from the Patriots. It kind of felt like a game that the Patriots were going to find their way back in. Houston had some big, dare I say, fluky plays early. Mills had the big touchdown where he threw it up to Chris Conley, I think it was. He just kind of threw it up. The guy made a catch, broke, I think, 2 tackles. It felt like a game that New England was going to get back eventually. New England also was without 4 out of their 5 offensive linemen. I mean, that was supposed to be the strength of this team coming in, right? Was run the ball, great offensive line. Even like Cam Newton and what he brought as a runner was supposed to be a part of it. This has turned into this kind of nickel and dime, quick-hitting passing game and trying to get back to great defense. Now they tightened up the hatches in the second half, and it was a good comeback, but it's against Houston. Like, New England is not impressive this season. And Houston kind of went balls to the wall early, and they just didn't have the firepower, I guess, on all phases of the game. New Orleans at Washington. The New Orleans Saints have been so consistently themselves this season, and that's just like a very solid team. They do everything. They are, as a team, the jack of all trades, master of none team. They are like good at running the ball, but not amazing. They're not good at passing the ball, but have some explosiveness in there. Defensively, they're very solid. The Saints' defense has been outstanding. I would say that's like their most redeeming quality. Their secondary is incredible. They have pieces up front to get after the quarterback. Their linebackers are really good. Like, all 3 levels, I would say, are top 10 for the Saints. The D-line, maybe not. Those guys haven't been super consistent this year, but you look at just their second level of that defense, from Demario Davis to Lattimore, who's been the best corner in the NFL this year, to Marcus Williams, P.J. Williams. You got Paulson Adebo at a great pick this week. Just so much talent in that secondary. Such an amazing job by that front office, that scouting staff, to put that group back together, because that was supposed to be a weakness for them. I didn't even mention Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Like, they're kind of that modern defense where you build back to top and down. Out and up and in is, I think, the saying of how you're supposed to build the modern defense. I don't know if I fully agree with that or not, but yeah, their defense is incredible. And then offensively, they're just so consistently average, and that's Sean Payton, really, and Alvin Kamara. As for the Washington, I'm literally just tired of saying the same thing every week, because that's what they've been. The defensive line did wake up this week. Chase Young had his best game of the season, so maybe that's, a good thing. They got Matt Ioannidis going, so maybe they can use that as fuel to get this defense playing better. But ultimately, it didn't matter. The secondary got obliterated, and they lost because their defense was terrible in this game. And Heineke didn't help. He had 4 turnover-worthy plays in this game, a couple bad picks. Made some plays too. He's like a drive-to-drive player where you're like, that was really sweet what he did that drive. And then he comes back out and you're like, oh, yep, he's a backup for a reason. I don't have anything else to add on Washington. They're just a very unstable team right now. Philadelphia at Carolina. This was like very under the radar, a really stunning comeback from the Eagles. They were getting outplayed this entire game. The Panthers' defense was really eating. Jalen Hurts was, I don't know what the numbers say, but it felt like averaging about 3 or 4 yards of completion. the Eagles just had nothing going offensively, and the Panthers defense, like yes, they lost and it sucks, but the takeaway is the Panthers defense still continues to play at the top of the league, and they're getting Stephon Gilmore in there, going to get C.J. Henderson more involved. So, like, the Panthers defense played really well, but Sam Darnold kind of, it was the Panthers just gave this game away, really. Sam Darnold, 3 bad picks in this game. He had his worst game as a Panther. The Panthers' offensive line, still no good. And the blocked punt was huge in this game, kind of sparked some life for Philadelphia, whereas Carolina was kind of trying to milk the game out, force the Eagles to go the whole field and lead a good drive. They block a punt, and all of a sudden the game script flipped. So it was just kind of it was kind of similar to the Lions game, although the Eagles finished the comeback, where it fell apart for Carolina very quickly. They played like 50 minutes of really good football, and then they just didn't have the offensive, firepower is not the right word, but they didn't have a good enough offense to finish the game. They definitely miss Christian McCaffrey. I will say that. What he was able to do underneath just to move the sticks, they need to get him back, because that was huge for Darnold, I think. So they're going to get him back. They're going to get Gilmore back. I think they have brighter days ahead of them for sure. But a rough loss. And for Philly, I don't know. I wasn't impressed by Jalen Hurts in this game. He made some plays down the stretch. He's kind of clutch. Like, he can make plays, but there's just so much missing from him as a quarterback. There's a couple just really inaccurate throws in this game. He had a free play, launched it up. He had one-on-one in the end zone, and he can't even get it in play. And then he had, I think it was 4th and 2, he misfired on a slant. There's just so much missing from Jalen Hurts to have any consistency there, even if he's kind of cool and fun. I don't know. They're going to have 3 first-round picks next year, probably really good ones. I mean, that Dolphins pick could be top 5. Their pick is going to be pretty high, and it looks like they're going to get the Carson Wentz pick at this point. And the Colts might not have a great pick either. Like, they're going to have 3 picks in the top 15. Are they really going to spend all this time evaluating the 6 quarterbacks in this class and say, we can spend one of these picks? Like, the odds of them not seeing one of those 6 quarterbacks or whoever it is as an upgrade over Jalen Hurts, it just seems minuscule. But he's fun. He was the reason they came back and won this game, but it wasn't like a pretty game from Jalen Hurts. Okay, Giants at Dallas. This game sucked. The Giants were already outmatched, and they got just injured to all hell. Daniel Jones, concussed. Saquon, just super unfortunate injury. Galladay out. The Giants didn't have a chance. They tried. I mean, they forced some turnovers earlier in this game. Just kind of silly stuff from Dallas. There was a pick that, credit to Lorenzo Carter, it was actually a really impressive play. Dallas went for on a 4th and 2. Dak's trying to hit the flat, and Lorenzo Carter, with length and athleticism, tips it up, deflects it. So that was a big play. Dallas also botched a snap down at like the 2-yard line. So the Giants kind of stuck around because of some turnovers in this game. But Dallas they're just so much better. I mean, Trayvon Diggs, just doing it again this week. He's at the point where he's like baiting quarterbacks to he's like, oh, I'm beat. Just kidding. He's really fast. Trayvon Diggs is. He's not necessarily quick, but yeah, he has underrated speed. So he's been awesome, obviously. But yeah, I mean, Dallas just kind of steamrolled. They ran the ball well. Dak was good again, and they rolled. So not a big surprise. Tennessee at Jacksonville. Is this our last one? It is. We got through this pretty quick. We might be at the half-hour mark. This was another game. There's a lot of games this week where I expected them to look more like that Giants-Cowboys game that we just did, that actually were like much closer games than they were supposed to look, or more interesting games. So Tennessee ended up winning this game like 37-19, I think, which looks like a blowout, right? it was actually a really entertaining game. So on like the third play of the game, Jacksonville on third down hits Dan Arnold, and he's like turning up field, and it was one of those deals where the ball popped out. Was it before he had possession? Was it after? I didn't think it was a catch, but Tennessee ends up scooping and scoring it. So Jacksonville's already down 7-0. That stinks. And I can't believe I'm saying this. I almost felt bad for Urban Meyer in that moment. Now, there's a couple plays later that I'll talk about that I was like, oh, yep, no, Urban Meyer's still a bad coach, so it's fine. But it is like, okay, nothing can go right for Urban Meyer right now. Not that he deserves anyone's pity, but he was just defeated in that moment. He was like, oh my God, nothing can go right in my life right now. It was a very like human moment. I was like, okay, Urban Meyer's still a human being, and I do still wish the best for him, even if he hasn't exactly earned that. But anyway, that happens. And then fast forward to about halftime, and it was a pretty competitive game in the first half. And Jacksonville misses a field goal before halftime, very makeable. They still haven't made a field goal this year, which is, I think, the first time that's ever happened. That's wild. So you're leaving 10 points really on the board. We don't know what it was third down with the fumble deal, so we don't know what Tennessee was going to do on the ensuing drive. But yeah, like they played okay offensively. They were running the ball well. James Robinson had a great first half. He looked super explosive. And then in the second half, Jacksonville was kind of leading a comeback. Really, I don't know what the exact score was. I think it was 19-31 late in this game, like 10 minutes left in this game, is what my memory is recalling there. So down 12, and they also missed a 2-point conversion after leading this comeback. So they're down 12, but again, if you make that field goal and you account for the swing on the fumble, no fumble deal, like, again, this is a very competitive game. That was a 10-point swing. This could have been a 2-point game with Jacksonville at the 1-yard line, 4th and 1. And Jacksonville got stuffed. It was a huge stop by Tennessee. They had an interception that was overturned because of holding that was away from the play, and then they got another goal line stop. They got like 6 straight stops. So, like, there's a couple moments in this game that just went against Jacksonville that actually could have gone either way. Now, Tennessee's super banged up. A.J. Brown, I don't think, is healthy. So you can make some excuses for Tennessee as well. Like, I don't think this really was about Tennessee, honestly. Like, they're a better team. Tannehill continues to just play really solid. Derrick Henry, Jacksonville had a hard time with Derrick Henry in this game, to say the least. So I didn't really have much to say about Tennessee. I know Titans fans get tired of me saying that. I think if they get A.J. Brown and Julio Jones back, I'll have a little more to take away from. I think they're a good team. They're a playoff team that I expect to be like a first-round exit if they aren't healthy right now. We'll learn a little bit more about them, but I thought Jacksonville kind of scratched and clawed and played a pretty good game. I mentioned that Urban Meyer had some bad coaching moments in this one. So in like the third quarter, he had a bad challenge. They ended up not needing that timeout, but they very well could have needed that timeout late in this game, especially if they end up converting that touchdown from the 1-yard line. So he had a bad challenge. Like, Tannehill got hit while he threw, and the ball went like forward 15 yards. Like, that never gets overturned. Like, clearly he had some element of control as he's throwing the ball and gets hit to launch the thing 15 yards. It was just a bad, like, frustration challenge by Urban Meyer. And then on that goal line stand where they got 6 chances from like the 3-yard line, they gave the ball to Carlos Hyde twice. You know, his Ohio State boy, Carlos Hyde. James Robinson was awesome in this game. There was also another 4th down or a 3rd down or something where they didn't give it to James Robinson earlier in that drive. Like, why did they have to go to Hyde? It's not like Robinson had just gotten a huge workload and needed a breather. This was just Urban Meyer being like, oh, my Ohio State guy has got this. No, wake the heck up. Like, use the good players on your team. That's what pisses me off about Urban Meyer. He has these like preconceived notions about like his players. He's gotten rid of a bunch of guys from like the other regime. Like, no, dude, James Robinson is really freaking good. He clearly doesn't value him because of the drafting of Etienne and how they've kind of like not treated him like a feature back. No, James Robinson's been one of the best backs in the NFL this year. Give him the damn ball with the game on the line from the 1 yard line. What are you doing? So, and it was like, there were plays where James Robinson has scored, where he breaks one tackle and then he accelerates into the end zone. Carlos Hyde didn't break the tackle. It was just very frustrating. So, still not a great, well-coached game from Urban Meyer. Trevor played well. Trevor was fine. I think Trevor's kind of getting comfortable. I think he looks good. I think he's got a bright future ahead of him. It's just the coaching stuff. Like, I'm a little worried. But yeah, it was a fun game. I enjoyed watching it. And good for Tennessee to keep winning with these injuries. Kind of in the same boat as Green Bay, just on like a lesser scale, in my opinion, where like they're staying alive. Let's see them get healthy. But Tennessee's defense just isn't very good. So that's, I guess, what the difference is there. And they don't have Aaron Rodgers. But yeah, that's all of our game breakdowns. Let's open up the mailbag. Going to try to move a little bit quicker. Try to keep this podcast under 2 hours if I can. We got a lot of questions here, though. I have not previewed these, but let's go. From Joe Woods. Also, by the way, guys, a reminder, you can sign up on patreon.com, just $1 a month. You get access to submit questions for the show. You patrons have been incredible. We've got 36 messages here, so let's go ahead and get started. Do I think, from Joe Woods, the Saints receiving core is an argument for the worst in the league? Yes. Short answer, yes. When Michael Thomas comes back, no. I've been hard on Michael Thomas, but when he's back, no. But actively, yeah. It's not very good. I do want to see them use Deontay Harris more, though. I think he's the second highest graded receiver in the NFL right now, but on like 11 catches. Like, I think he got 3 snaps. He's good. He's just short. From Nathaniel Marcuson. Do I find it easier to admit fault when I thought a player or team was good and they turn out bad? Or inversely? Follow-up, how has your bias management evolved over time? As far as the bias management thing, I feel like I have always done a pretty good job of that because I watch every game the same way. The way I tend to watch games is like I try to put myself in like the fan of that team's perspective. I've always kind of taken that as an active approach to try and avoid bias. So that way you think like when something goes wrong, you kind of have that same like frustration about why something goes wrong. Or when something goes right, you get kind of emotionally into it as well. So that's kind of helped. But I mean, I think bias management, I don't like, oh, I'm only going to watch the good teams this week. No, I mean, I'd like this podcast to serve as evidence that like I watched every game this week, and I think that helps. But is it easier to admit fault when I thought a team was going to be good and they turn out bad, or when I thought they'd be bad and they turn out good? I would say when I thought a team was going to be bad and they turn out good. I don't want anybody to fail, right? I'm going to have predictions about who I think that's going to be, but I don't enjoy seeing Miami suck this year, even though I thought they were going to be good. I don't enjoy seeing the Giants at 1-5. No, I think it's easier when I think a team's going to be bad and they prove me wrong. I think that's fun. I'm ultimately a fan of the game and enjoy good football, so I'd much rather that way. From Cormac, do I believe in Spagnuolo to get the Chiefs D playing back at the Super Bowl this year? I believe in the Chiefs offense, and I believe in Chris Jones. I certainly am not ruling the Chiefs out of the Super Bowl yet. I believe they were my pick coming into the year to make it to the Super Bowl. I I think that's my answer. Like, I believe that the offense can take better care of the football, and that'll take some pressure off of the defense. But the Chiefs' defense, I said it coming into the year, it's why I was accused of being too low on them, was I said this defense is not very good. It's actually really bad. It's just Chris Jones and, like, nobody else. So I think they can still win the Super Bowl this year. I don't think it'll be because their defense. I think they can do a better job. Okay, from Nicholas Craig, can you explain more of how coaches can scheme receivers open? I said I was going to try to make this quick. I mean, that's the ultimate question, right? That's why the top offensive coordinators get paid what they do. But, play action's really good at scheming receivers open over the middle of the field, because if you're in a zone coverage, the safeties are dropping deep. If you can draw the linebackers in a few steps, drop a crossing route to a speedy receiver over the top, that's a really good way to scheme guys open. That's why the Shanahan offense is so successful. You can do like rub routes, pick route stuff where you're, running a guy at another receiver's defender to, create that separation. Those are a couple of really common ways. There's also just in general, basic NFL schemes, they're called schemes for a reason. Like, they're designed to get certain receivers open. So if you call the right concept, say you call a dig against, cover 3, that's just being a good offensive coordinator. If you're expecting cover 3, you call a dagger route where you're clearing the free safety, and then you bring in a in route underneath it. There's all of these different schemes that NFL teams have been running for years that are designed to get receivers open. So there's certain things you can have go to, we're going to scheme guys open off those first 2 things I mentioned, and there's other just rhythm play calling, understanding what coverage you're going to get in that situation and calling the right concept. So I hope that answers your question. From Devontae, with Herbert being much better than what you or most analysts thought he would be, have you gone back to his college tape and seen anything that you might have missed? I did that last year, and I honestly don't have any regrets about what I said about Herbert coming in. I obviously was wrong, but it's just, he wasn't this player in college. There's a reason so many people were low on him. He didn't have these explosive plays. He didn't have this elite ball placement down the field. He was relatively accurate, but he sprayed a lot of throws in college that he's not doing at this level. His pocket presence was doo-doo at Oregon. I saw what I saw, and I said what I felt I saw, and he proved me wrong, and I'm happy to see it. But no, I did actually. I did go back. I watched 2 Oregon games after the fact, during the draft process last year, because I had some thoughts about some of the things I felt about Justin Fields being kind of similar to Herbert. And yeah, I mean, I didn't see anything different when I did it. I saw a different quarterback at Oregon. So it is what it is. I'm not going to back off of that. I'm not going to just lie about what I was seeing. He was not a very good, he was a good quarterback, but he wasn't a great college quarterback. From Tomsky, love the segment about the Ravens, my last podcast. You mentioned 2 ways defenses stopped the Ravens' run game. Can you explain that any further? I think I actually kind of did this earlier in the show, so I'm just going to defer you to that. You have scrape exchanges where you crash the D end intentionally, and then you loop the linebacker. So, when the quarterback is reading the read option, if the edge player collapses, the read will tell you to keep the ball and run, right? So defenses are basically trapping the quarterback. They're going to crash the edge, force the quarterback to keep, and then they're going to loop the linebacker into that gap. It's a trick as old as time as far as the read option goes. So there's that schematically. And then also, I think just formationally and alignment-wise, as long as you have good enough interior defensive linemen, I think you can load up a couple extra defenders on the perimeter so that even if Lamar makes one guy miss, there's another guy there. Or even if Lamar is reading one guy, there's another guy there that's unblocked. So those are, I think, the two things I'm seeing about how teams have started to defend the Ravens. Okay, from Bill Jones. Do I think it's time for the Vikings to fire everyone? Probably. To be completely honest, I do like their front office. But it's probably been enough. Like, how long do you want to settle for 10 wins with Kirk Cousins and Zimmer? It's just good. They're good players, a good coach, but there's a cap. So it just depends on the ownership and how patient they want to be. Because if you do that, if you blow it up, you're going to be bad for a couple years. But you have to be willing to do that. From Luke, I know you don't focus on college scouting until January, but do I think Spencer Rattler's benching will affect his draft stock? I honestly didn't even know that happened. So, again, I just don't have time for college football. I barely have time to get my workload in with these short weeks with all the travel. So, probably, yeah, if you got benched, that's probably going to affect it. But I just don't know. I don't have the information, so I can't answer your question, unfortunately. From Josh, are we too quick to write off deflections at the line of scrimmage that result in picks as being the quarterback's fault? I don't think that's on the quarterback. There might be situations, something actually just came to my mind from that Trey Lance film room where he was ready to throw a ball on time, but the right guard got pressured, and instead of throwing it with the pressure right in his face, he tucked it and ran and threw it a little bit later. That's a pretty unique situation. I mean, for the most part, deflections are just good plays by the defensive lineman. I mean, it's supposed to be, the offensive line is supposed to have their guy, so they can't jump up and do that. I will pretty much never put a deflection on the quarterback, personally, and I don't think NFL people do either. It's just kind of a fluky play that you just tip your cap to the defense. Is kind of the way I look at it. A message from this might be from Germany. I'm gonna try this. Let me know if I'm butchering this name. Jonke Westner? I don't know if the J is silent. Otherwise, it's Jonke Westner. We'll see. Let me know how I did. After losing 3 straight, many Niners fans want Shanahan to be fired. I don't really get it. Am I still high on Shanahan, or do these bum Niners fans, are they delusional? Yeah, no, it's not time to fire Shanahan yet. There's been some growing concerns, but like I said, I liked the game plan from the Niners. It didn't go their way. They got stuffed at the 1-yard line. But the one thing about Shanahan is I wish he would coach guys up to not take so many hits. Because Kittle does it. Debo did it in this game where, he literally was standing, not even running, next to the sideline, 2 defenders closing. He stops his body and trucks the corner just to do it. He gained maybe a half a yard. I do think there's something about their style of offense and how much they preach run after catch. There needs to be more of a balance there because Debo has not been able to stay healthy. Kittle has not been able to stay healthy. I do wish, and they certainly need to preach that to Trey Lance. You don't want Trey Lance doing that. I do think that's the one thing with Shannon. It's keep these guys healthy, man. Other than that, I think Shanahan's still an offensive genius and definitely shouldn't be on the hot seat yet. I think you got to be on the hot seat before you ask for a guy to get fired. And I don't think he's on the hot seat until halfway through next season if they're still not winning games with Trey Lance. Because he bought himself some time by going to get Trey Lance. He just did. And maybe that was a 3D level chess thing. Like if they went with Fields, maybe there's more pressure like there is in Chicago for Fields to step in because we saw it more in college. Whereas Trey Lance, it's like, he's this raw prospect. We need some time to get him up to speed. Maybe that was 3D level chess from Shanahan. I don't know. But I think they still love Shanahan in that building. Okay, from Patrick. Who do you have as coach of the year so far? Coach of the year so far, probably Staley would be my coach of the year pick. I do think Mike McCarthy needs to be mentioned because the Dan Quinn hire was genius. He's gotten that defense to work. The offense has been just well managed. I think Mike McCarthy deserves an honest. I truly do believe Matt LaFleur needs to get more respect. I mean, you look at the Packers roster right now, they are completely derailed by injuries. His play calling's been exceptional. He continues to help everything. He makes everything easier for everybody, the running backs, the receivers, the quarterbacks, the offensive line. That's probably my top three. Cliff's in there, but I think that's more Kyler just being special and the defense playing really well. So those would be my top four. I think Brandon Staley's probably my pick. For Matthew, might be a little crazy, but let's say Cleveland falls short of expectations. Let's say they lose in the wild card, and Baker continues to play mediocre. Do they look to move on from him and maybe go all in for like Russ or Rodgers? Wow, can you imagine Rodgers going over to Cleveland next year? Man, it's possible. I mean, it's certainly possible. I wouldn't predict that to happen. I would say that's, especially if they're in the playoff. If they make the playoffs, they'll stick with Baker. If they like really fall apart, I think Baker would have to play like a bottom 12 guy the rest of the year. Then they could. If they make the playoffs, I think they probably pay Baker. Baker gets a lot of crap. He hasn't been great, but he's been pretty good. From Jacob, I know this is a hard question, but where do you see the Raiders' outlook for the rest of the year and offseason? I did that, fortunately, so I will just defer you to the earlier part of the show. Thank you for the question, Jacob. From Honk Boy, is it time for a full-scale rebuild in Las Vegas? Again, we kind of did this. I do think that's what they should do. Most of the time, ownership isn't all in on the like blow it up and start over approach. I think that's what would be best for that organization and would be more appealing to a guy like Dable to be like, you get a blank slate, we give you time. Probably what happens is they get the third or fourth head coach hire and they try to squeeze out what window they have. But I would blow it up, absolutely. From Cole Latron, who do I think will be better for the rest of the season in fantasy football? Kyle Pitts or Dawson Knox? Kyle Pitts. Pretty easy decision there for me. From Matt, what was your take on Kadarius Toney full starting debut? I mean, what's not to say about Kadarius Toney? I mean, if you want something good to take away from the Giants game, wow. Whoa. Like, Kadarius Toney was doing everything. Getting open. The run after catch was truly special. Like, Tyreek Hill level elusiveness, shiftiness, ball carrier vision in space. He had a couple really beautiful catches. That was my one thing with Toney, because I liked him. I thought he was first, second round prospect. I think there was a lot of hype for him. I was kind of in between the hype and not hype. I thought he was a really good prospect. The one kind of negative note I had on him was like his hands, his ball skills. And he made like incredible catches in this game. So, yeah, I mean, they should shop Shepard. They should really shop Shepard because they could get a valuable pick for Sterling Shepard. And you don't need him. You got Galladay, you got Toney, you got Slayton. They should really shop Shepard and let Toney operate in that playmaker slot receiver role. From Nathan, with the amount of magic surrounding the Ravens this season, is it crazy to think this is their year, or is it a case of peaking too early in the season? I mean, dude, if Lamar plays like this, if he keeps this up, they get Bateman back, the defense continues to shape into form, like, this is a better formula for winning playoff games than they've had, is having a quarterback playing like a, elite guy. So it's interesting for sure, because their roster's not as good, but their quarterback play is much better than it's been. So it could be their year. You also have the fact that the Chiefs aren't as good. So, they're in the mix there. They're right. We're gonna see them play the Chargers this week. I mean, shit. Like, we'll get a good answer this weekend. A better feel for how they're gonna stack up against the great teams. Because, Detroit, Broncos, Colts, good wins, but it's not the Chargers. But they did beat the Chiefs too. So, yeah, man, Ravens are sweet. I'm pulling for them. What are your final record predictions for the Cincinnati Bengals? 8-9, 9-8. I love what Burrow brings to the table. He's going to keep them in pretty much every game. My hold up there is, like, how do we feel about Zach Taylor at the end of the year? I will say Taylor's been a little better the last couple weeks. I've liked some of the play calls, but yeah, I think 9-8. I don't know if they're a playoff team, but they're close. They're right in there. Wyatt is just letting me know that he sent in his app for the TFGO League. That was not a mailbag question, but I will take that second to let you guys know we still have about 4 or 5 spots open for our Madden 22 TFGO League on Next Generation Xbox. I've tweeted about it. There's a link in my Bengals rebuild video on YouTube. If you're interested, it's a super realistic league. Got 17-page rule book, and yeah, it's sweet. If you want that real NFL experience in Madden, then check it out. We'd love to have you. I just gotta check out the application link and send it in. So thank you, Wyatt, for allowing me to plug that through the mailbag. Okay, we got 6 questions left from Joseph Ortiz. Says, thank you for all your content. I know you work your ass off to provide deep and thoughtful analysis. Thank you for noticing, Joseph. With all the field drama aside, how attractive is the Raiders head coaching job? We're getting a lot of Raiders questions. I like these, but we did hit on these pretty heavily. I exclusively said how attractive it is. So, going to defer you to that. Thank you, Joseph, for the question and your patronage. Eric asks, Indy's defense had an epic collapse in Baltimore. What's our issue? Injuries in the secondary is my answer. The secondary fell apart. It's the same thing with the Colts. They need more of a pass rush. They're hoping that, I almost said Gary. It's not Gary. Kwity Paye. They're hoping Kwity Paye can get there and be that complimentary high-end number 2 next to DeForest Buckner, but they need somebody other than Buckner. They really do. And then you get injured in the secondary. That's not a good recipe for stopping Lamar Jackson, playing at the top of his game. I do still think Indy's defense is good. Don't get me wrong. But against the best passing teams, like, you need a better pass rush at the end of the day. So they're working on it. They drafted Kwity Paye. They have some other young players that they're hoping can kind of come into stride. But they need the critical positions of defense to be figured out, because they got a D tackle, they got a linebacker, they got a slot corner. You ask around the league, people will say those are the 3 least important positions. Maybe safety would be part of the least important group. But you need edge rushers and corners. That's really how you stop the pass consistently in the NFL, and they don't have those. They have some of the worst at those positions in the league right now. Tyler Beeman. We heard for years that the Brady-era Patriots ran a complex offensive scheme that changed week to week. Could you please do a quick breakdown on what made their scheme unique? And would you consider it a quarterback-friendly system? I would not consider it a quarterback-friendly system, to answer that question first, because quarterback-friendly to me means simplifying reads. I would say it doesn't require like a lot of physical talent, because the core of it was quick passes. But that's not easy to go sometimes 13 plays without making a mistake on a bunch of quick option routes. The other thing is option routes, by the way. We'll talk a little bit about what the scheme was. So part of what made Brady so dangerous is the option route offense, which is basically the quarterback and the receiver need to be on the same page, because there's multiple things that a receiver can do, or a running back out of the backfield, or a tight end. There's multiple things they can do based on the coverage they're seeing. If it's man coverage, they'll do one thing. If it's cover 2, they'll do another thing. If it's cover 6, they'll do another thing. So not only do you need to know the play call, you need to know your different rules inside of those option routes. Now, Brady, best option route quarterback ever. He knows exactly where he needs to go with the football, but that's not easy to do. That takes a crap ton of preparation and ability to recognize coverages. I wouldn't say it's a quarterback-friendly system. It's just a system that's friendly to Tom Brady's skill set, but that's what you do, right? You craft your offense around what your quarterback's strengths are. So that's really what it was. Now, I'm not saying it's a check-down offense, but that was the heart of it. And then you're going to have your shots inside of every concept. You're going to have options to take the top off and take your shots, and Brady would do that at the right time. So that's, for the most part, that's what their scheme was. As far as changing week to week, I don't think the scheme so much changed. It was more like that's the Patriot way, is finding the correct matchups. Like Belichick, he's always thinking matchups, where's my advantage? And that's just going to change week to week. So sometimes that means it might have been a James White week. It might have been a run the ball week. It might have been a Julian Edelman week, a Gronk week. You know, their offense looked different a lot of the times. The scheme, I don't think necessarily changed. Just their approach is very like matchup dependent. So I hope that answers your question. From Dawson Triplett, how have I felt about Todd Downing's play calling? Personally, him and Shane Bowen need to go. Shane Bowen being the defensive coordinator there. Shane Bowen is the defensive coordinator. Well, to me, it's Mike Vrabel's defense at the end of the day, so I have a hard time blaming Shane Bowen for their defense, but I do agree the Titans' defense has been severely disappointing and needs to get better fast. Todd Downing's play calling, I think he's maybe missing a little bit of what Arthur Smith brought to the table, but he's basically just doing the same stuff. You know, I don't know. I haven't noticed it being noticeably terrible. They seem to be doing the same stuff with the play action, the running. There was never a lot of there wasn't a ton of creativity from Arthur Smith. It's just a lot of knowing the pacing of the game is what Arthur Smith was really good, as far as when do you go outside zone, when do you call the play action shot. It hasn't really been there for Todd Downing. I don't know. I don't think the coaching is necessarily the issue for the Titans. I think you've had injuries to the receivers, which is never going to make things easy. And defensively, I don't love their defensive roster. They have depth, but no superstars really anywhere. So I don't know. It's always kind of been a roster talent thing for me. You also don't have a quarterback that makes you right when you're wrong. You know, as good as Tannehill's been, he's he's not a guy that makes you right when you're wrong. That's what's so valuable about Rodgers and Josh Allen and Kyler and Herbert is every coordinator is going to pick the wrong play multiple times inside a game. That's a big difference, though, is the quarterbacks that, when there isn't anything there, they'll make stuff happen, and make the offensive coordinator look better. You don't have a quarterback that's doing that for you, too, is another thing for Todd Downing. I think he's done fine, personally. 2 more questions. I saw this on PFF's Twitter, wanted to know my thoughts on it, from Nick Christensen, by the way. If you could have had one following quarterback, if you could have one of the following quarterbacks on a 10-year deal, who would you take? Josh Allen, Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, or Kyler Murray? I'd take Burrow or Allen, but it's tough. It is tough. I mean, that to me is the future of the NFL right there. I would, as much as I love Burrow, I've been as big of a Burrow advocate as ever. I would probably cross him off because these other guys are just so special and can just do even more things, even though I freaking love Joe Burrow. If it's between Allen and Herbert, I would take Allen, so I'll cross off Herbert for that reason. Then you're looking at Allen, Lamar, and Murray. Lamar, I'm getting there. I think if he keeps doing what he's been doing the last month, he's definitely up there with these two guys, but I'll cross Lamar off for now. And then it's Josh Allen and Kyler Murray. Oh, God, that's so tough. Gun to head, give me Kyler Murray. Because I think as a passer, he's close. But Kyler's just athletic ability. But at the same time, Allen might be more. So if it's for 10 years, so these guys are going to be at 35. Oh, man. I think Allen's raw arm talent probably makes him better later into his career. So tough. So freaking tough. Either way, you're sitting pretty. I guess Josh Allen's my final answer, but I don't feel good about it. I think there's a world where Kyler turns into the better player. I've been just stunned by Kyler Murray's play this year. Okay, last question from Matthew Bramble. What are the chances of the Seahawks trading away key veterans on our team before the trade deadline, guys like Bobby Wagner and Quandre Diggs? I don't know if that's their style, but they are lacking some draft picks. They gave up. They don't have a first for for Jamal Adams, which, by the way, that trade is officially, I think, a loss for the Seahawks. Jamal just hasn't been that level player. Man, that's tough because you have Russ, right? You're going to be in the picture every year as long as you have Russell Wilson. Bobby, I think you keep because he's such a legend and he's still playing really good. And Diggs, I just don't know if you're going to get enough for him to warrant that trade, but I will say Marquise Blair should not be playing slot corner, and I think he could still have a future at free safety. So that could be the move. But yeah, it's tough. I don't see them doing it personally because I don't know if that's their style, and you have Russ. They could. I wouldn't. I probably wouldn't do it, though. All right, I'm just going to refresh this and make sure we got everything. Yeah, that's it. Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This has been the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. I am Marcus Whitman, and this was a really fun show. I enjoyed this one. I hope you guys did as well. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do hit that like button. Leave a review if you're listening to the audio version. Also, guys, tell your friends. Tell your friends about the show. Help grow the channel. Would really appreciate it. Check out my Patreon. Finally got a film breakdown up. and picks coming out tomorrow. So just lots of great content coming. Appreciate you guys for watching. And we'll see you tomorrow for Studs and Duds. Peace out.